Chapter 30. The Thing. 2. The flashing of the flame shot through Kai's head like a blinding light as a minor shock of pain, if only for a second, moved to the back of his eyes. Kai stood up, and looking at the berserker, he felt a sting of distaste surface to his chest for the man before him, only to dissipate in the shrouded mystery of the grand narrative behind the origins of the path and the prophecy of the one mighty and strong. With a serious face, the berserker opened the cell door Kai was in, and then, raising his hand, gestured for him to wait. For 15 seconds, the two stared at one another, neither breaking eye contact, both unwilling to be the first to look away. Then, smiling, the berserker said hoarsely, "If you so much as make a single fast move, I will break your nose, Ingus." Refusing to lose his composure, Kai firmly responded by raising one eyebrow with a look as if to say, "You'll have to find out for yourself whether or not I run," before stepping out of the cage. Not liking this, and perceiving it as arrogant, the berserker, in a rage, struck Kai with a fist in the rib, with as much force as a blacksmith would when coming down on a burning blade. Immediately, all of Kai's air left his lungs as he gasped for breath like a man who had just resurfaced to the open air above a lake after a deep dive. "You might think that being Ragnbjorg's thrall keeps you safe," the berserker snapped. "But just know, Ingus, that even a hersier like him can't always protect you when berserkers go hunting, and most especially when during their hunt they are hungry for blood. Now move!" After pushing Kai, who was holding his stinging rib, Kai stumbled but caught his footing. As they walked through the dungeon of cold, mouldy stone walls on each side that were just dimly lit by the torchlight, the sound of rapid feet from mice could be heard scurrying around them. There was a distinct moisture in the air, having been underground, that quickly began to lose its condensation the more the two climbed the rock stairs to reach the surface level of the enclosed dungeon that was concealed by a roof of wooden log shafts tied together. Pushing up against this covering and moving it to the side, Kai pulled himself out of the hidden hole entrance to the dungeon and found himself in a hut. In the hut, there sat an old man facing the wooden doors, silent, not speaking as he meditated on a mat. The berserker pushed Kai out of this hut, the same one he had been brought into a day earlier with a bag on his head, and into the dirt road that separated the Traust town huts on each village side. As Kai walked with his head down, trying to avoid eye contact with the surrounding villagers, it became obvious that news of his alleged escape had spread like wildfire throughout the tribe. People either gave him a look of suspicion, or they, after holding their gaze angrily for a few seconds, quickly looked away in dismay. Moving closer and closer to the largest hut he had seen in the center of the village, where the Trausts had assembled his first thing to pronounce on him ordeal, Kai realized that there was no throne or seating set up outside, but that the berserker was escorting him into the entrance of the structure itself, the main hall. Kai now found himself indoors in the tribe's grand hall, or king's lair. In the main hall, there were 2 thrones, where the king and queen sat in front and center on an elevated platform. Just beneath the elevated platform was a grand table, where the Traust royal family sat, consisting of 2 daughters in their early 20s and 1 young adult son who appeared to be Kai's age. On each side of the grand table stood 2 berserkers, as well as 2 more on each side of the king and queen's thrones. Facing the thrones and the grand table were various jarls, mixed with a few well-respected carls, all standing in a circle, all waiting and whispering amongst each other. Just in this group, Kai spotted Ragnbjorg, who, after studying Kai silently, quickly turned his attention to a berserker who began talking to him. Behind the circle of Jarls and Karls in the grand hall, closest to the entrance where Kai now stood, Kai spotted Bodil and Ingvar, who looked at him with an almost pleading, yet pitiful look. Does Ragnbjorg know his wife is a Christian? Kai thought to himself. Else why did my Yggdrasil necklace end up in the hands of the same people making the Christian gesture? Ingvar could be seen clutching his mother's long skirt. Then the berserker who had escorted him stepped forward, his voice booming. Here stands the Langra Ingus, the runaway found near our borders, accused of spying or trying to escape during the late day. Let the thing decide his fate. The crowd erupted with murmurs of anger, curiosity, and fear breaking out. He sought to flee. No, he sought to betray. Perhaps he was led by the gods, or by Dragas.
The king raised his hand,
and silence fell. Langer, he said slowly, you crossed into our land, and we spared your life. Now tell us, what drove you to our gates? Kai hesitated. The truth burned in him with more fervor than he had ever imagined it would. That is, that he had seen Christians. Either Bodil or Ingvar had his Yggdrasil necklace and was somehow associated with the lady who made the Christian sign that he had followed. But to speak that truth now could be her death. Now, having been silent, the crowd began to murmur, in doubt, growing more suspicious of Kai. The king again raised his hand, silencing them. Let the accused speak for himself. Ingus, you may begin. Kai looked up, his voice low but clear. I came not as a spy, nor did I come to bring evil upon your people, nor even to attempt desertion. I saw a gathering of prayer to the gods and wanted only to learn more. Bodil's eyes widened, just barely, as her knuckles whitened around her son's hand. What kind of gathering? The king asked. Kai hesitated. A gathering of prayer to the gods, he said finally. Men and women praying. I thought them of your tribe. And were they? Kai met the king's gaze while refusing to look in Bodil's direction. Perhaps, he said softly, and perhaps not. The crowd rustled again. Then Frigg, Astrid's mother, caught Kai's eye, who turned her head toward Bodil, sneering aloud. There are whispers, my king, of secret prayers in the late afternoon. Some say that Ragnbjorg's house has not been free of foreign spirits even before Ingus arrived. Ragnbjorg's voice cut through the air like steel. Who dares accuse my house of Djorfulur, demonic possession? But his words only fed the fire. Another Jarl spoke. I have heard a woman sing when no gods were called upon. Not Odin's name, nor Thor's, but that of the Christ God. At that name, the hall fell into a tense, uneasy silence. The king leaned forward, his tone deliberate. Christ, he repeated, slowly pronouncing the word. A foreign god, a god of slaves and Rome, and yet his name crosses the northern wind. Even here. His eyes flicked, almost imperceptibly toward Bodil, who was standing utterly still, with her head bowed, yet still trembling. Kai could feel her fear. He swallowed hard, fighting to hold his silence. If he spoke, she was finished. But if he stayed silent, suspicion might still damn her. He drew a breath. I saw no Christian. Only men of your own blood, praying to the same gods you do. Having said this, it wasn't the lying itself that Kai feared before the gods, but of the separate devotion he now had in protecting Bodil from the deities he was raised to believe in. The king's gaze sharpened, seeing more than the words. "Then, perhaps," he said, "you are a better liar than you appear, or a fool caught between gods." The queen shifted uneasily, looking to her husband. "Enough. The man will answer what is asked of him, not what the wind whispers." But the king's voice cut through. "And it shall come to pass that I, Odin, will send one mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power in his hand, clothed with light for a covering, whose mouth shall utter words, eternal words, while his bowels shall be a fountain of truth, to set in order mine house, and to arrange by lot the inheritances of the Trausts whose names are found, and the names of their fathers and of their children, enrolled in the book of the law." His eyes did not leave Bodil. "Tell me, Inguz, does your tribe's prophecy speak the same?" Kai felt the weight of two gazes, both his and Bodil's. "It does," he said slowly, "but the meaning differs. For the Langer, he is a messenger. For the Traust, he is a sacrifice." The king smiled faintly. "Then perhaps both tribes wait for the same man. One who carries truth in his mouth, yet bleeds for the house he came to save." The words hung like smoke as Kai's pulse throbbed in his temples. All the eyes in the room could be seen fixed on him, while the unspoken idea of a living sacrifice to be offered to Odin could be felt bearing its weight down on the man who was standing trial. Kai drew a breath. "I came," he began carefully, "because I sought to know whether the stories told by my tribe were true. The tales of the Trausts, of your gods, your weird. I wanted to learn more about the one mighty and strong." A sharp murmur rippled through the hall. The king leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "And what did you find, son of Langers? Truth or lies?" Kai looked up at him. "Tell me, my king, what is truth among tribes who share the same deities, perhaps even the same prophecies, but war over whether or not they are the gods chosen, or how such prophecies are to be interpreted?" A wave of outrage swept through the hall. "Insolence from a prisoner!" a warrior shouted. The berserker beside Kai took a step forward, ready to strike him again, but the king raised his hand. "Let him speak," he said softly. "He stands beneath the shadow of prophecy, whether he knows it or not." "That prophecy belongs to us," shouted a Jarl. "Yes," barked another. "The Langs tainted its meaning when they turned their backs on Odin." Kai's thoughts began to churn. The same prophecy, two interpretations. One sees a messenger, the other a sacrifice. He remembered the madman's words in the dungeon, and a chill passed through him. The king turned to him again. "Tell me, Inguz, what do your people call the one mighty and strong?" Kai hesitated. "A messenger," he said finally. "A man who will carry truth as a sword in his mouth." "And ours," the king said, his eyes pressing forward, "believe he must die for the people so that the tribe does not perish. Tell me, is he a messenger or sacrifice?" The question struck him like a hammer. Messenger or sacrifice? He not only could not answer, for he did not know, but dared not answer. For if he said messenger, he would be liable to being considered loyal to the Langs. But if he said sacrifice, there was no telling where that could lead. But before the silence could break, a horn sounded outside, low and distant, then another, closer, followed finally by a scream. The hall erupted into chaos. Warriors reached for axes as women fled to the corners of the hall, clutching their children. The great doors burst open, and the wind carried in smoke, and the clamour of steel on steel. "Langs!" a berserker roared. "They've breached the western gate!" The king rose, shouting commands, but his voice was drowned by the roar of panic. The assembly broke apart as warriors rushed to defend the hall. Kai turned and looked in Bodil's direction, seeing that she had thrown herself over Ingvar as raiders poured into the square outside. As various figures broke through the door, Kai caught a glimpse of a Lang warrior he recognized, eyes wild, blade raised high. His gaze was locked onto Ingvar as he approached the mother shielding her son. Before thought could intervene, Kai lunged. The world slowed. The sound of his own breath, the heat of blood pounding in his temples, all came together as one united sensation. He tackled the Lang warrior to the ground as they began warring, struggling for dominance with the clanging of metal and the striking of fists against flesh. Kai seized a fallen dagger and drove it through the Lang's neck. The blade sank deep into his throat as hot blood immediately began to squirt out with the rhythmic pulse of the warrior's heartbeat. The Lang warrior's breath escaped in a hiss, his body going limp. For a moment, Kai felt nothing but silence. Then he looked down at his red hands as the weight of the man's body became heavy on his chest. Ragnbjorg, having been cut off from his family by the crowd that had formed, gave Kai a look of complete and endearing respect and trust as he lifted the Lang off him while handing him a sword he had taken from the armory. "Come, Inguz, I trust you. Help us fight to protect the village. All move forward," he yelled, as the berserkers from the inside roared with enthusiasm to meet the Langs in battle. Kai rose slowly, blood dripping from his hands. His chest heaved as words now stood still in his mind. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Bodil's painful, radiant eyes met Kai's as they expressed the fullness of something akin to both sorrow and recognition. Outside, the clang of battle grew louder as the night became a storm of flame and steel. Inside the hall, Frigg looked upon Kai as if she saw something more than mortal in him. "The one mighty and strong," she whispered to herself in the same trance-like state that she had performed her magical incantations on Kai with. "Is it this Kai?"